Orchestra's spring concert, which we are titling Maestra, Women Compose the Millennium. Very happy to have you here tonight, and we do have quite a special concert in store for you. However, before we get to that, just a reminder, if everyone can please silence their cell phones and electronic devices, just because there are many tender, quiet moments in this concert that we do want to honor that space there. So just a reminder to do that. My phone just went off backstage a minute before this, and I was like, that's a good reminder for me too. So, and like I said, we do have a special concert in store for you. Not only are we going to take you on a musical journey through the history of Western music, but we are doing so by highlighting women composers throughout that history. So, and when I say history, I do mean the history of Western music, so music in the Western Hemisphere here is what we're talking about. So the reason we are featuring women in this concert is to demonstrate that although we might not know of any household names, women composers, or maybe any on the program here, women composers have always existed throughout music history, and it's truly only the society that they lived in that has marginalized them to the history books in the margins. So they have always existed, and tonight we're going to be bringing some light to them and giving them some well-deserved, though late recognition. The other thing to know is, even today, there is a disparity in women composers. Less than 10% of orchestral music being played today throughout the world is written by women. So we still have a lot of work to do, and I believe it is our job to highlight those people that have contributed to the art and raise their status as composers in their own right. And we strive for that. And we hope that, us and others that choose to do this kind of thing or highlight music written by women will do the job of inspiring more women to compose and join the ranks in that field. Now, we begin our musical journey, our musical history lesson, I should say, in the medieval period, which is one of the earliest periods in which we have actual written down music on paper. There was music going on, obviously, well before that, but none that we really actually have a record of in paper. So we are going to start with a medieval piece by Hildegard von Bingen, which I'm sure many people have heard that name. Hildegard was a Renaissance woman before that was even an era yet. She was the lead abbess in her abbey. She was a philosopher. She was a seer. She had many prophecies and visions. She corresponded with lords, ladies, kings, the pope, bishops. Everybody wanted to speak with her to get some prophecy foretold to them. She was also a scientist, a healer, and maybe her most notably, a composer. So we are playing one of her pieces, which is a sacred musical drama. So it's essentially a musical like we would have today, but a little bit more modest and has some religious themes and characters throughout. This piece that we're playing, the Ordo Virtutum, this was a drama. The piece that we're playing is the closing chorus to that. So this is kind of the final big hit number at the end of the song and dance here. So this drama, the Ordo Virtutum, which translates to the virtues, it's essentially about this wayward soul that has strayed from God, and the 7 virtues are leading this soul back to a spiritual and fulfilling life. So what we're going to hear is the treble voices, our kind of higher voices in the orchestra, are going to be representing the virtues that are, because this is the closing chorus, they're kind of giving, and here's the moral of the story, be nice to others, help people, all that kind of stuff. And then they're going to quote the prophet, Jesus Christ, who's going to be represented by our bass and treble or tenor instruments on the other side, where he's going to give a lesson and then hand it back to the virtues to close out the piece. So a little bit about medieval music in this era. It's important to know that none of the instruments behind me really existed or were invented yet. So there are some liberties that I have taken in arranging this piece from the original 12th century manuscript. So originally this is all sung by chorus, obviously, but we're going to try to replicate those voices here. And something that you're going to hear is everybody plays the same exact thing throughout the entire piece, and that's a style known as monophony or monophony, where, meaning one voice, everybody's going to play the same thing and move in tandem throughout the whole piece. Now something like that would usually be sung under a drone or a low note playing throughout the whole piece. And our drone for tonight is our lovely bass section, who gets the absolute privilege to play one long note the entire time. And they love it so much. And maybe we should have talked to the arranger about that musical decision, but that's so we are very happy to present to you this concert tonight. Our first piece we'll be playing for you is the closing chorus of the Ordo Virtutum by Hildegard von Bingen. Thank you for being here. of that in orchestra concerts before. It's a pretty unique thing to have orchestra music before orchestra music was a thing. So, our next musical period is going to jump us forward about 400 years. We're going to the Renaissance period now. This period is known for an explosion of arts, culture, music, science. And that includes in the music world both sacred and secular music. So sacred meaning music of the church, and secular being music outside of church. So folks were writing songs about usually love and working life, family life, all kinds of things, nature, observations of society, all that kind of stuff. Criticisms of the rulers, all that kind of stuff. So the next piece that we're playing is a piece by Maddalena Casulana, and it's an example of that secular part, secular piece of music, and represents the style of that time known as polyphony. So this is exactly opposite of what we just heard, where we have one voice moving along together. Some people have described that style as dull. Others have described it as very relaxing and calming because it's just kind of, one voice traveling through. This is a complete rejection of that, where we have several voices. In this case, we have 6 different voices that are all playing at the same time, playing their own melody that fit kind of together like a big puzzle. So that's the next piece that we're going to be playing for you. And perhaps the most unifying quote that I have for this whole concert is actually in your program, kind of cleverly, on the inside, cleverly spiraled throughout, and where this is the composer that you're about to hear, Maddalena Casulana, that said, in this world, in this profession of music, I hope to point out the vain error of men in thinking that they are the only ones with the gifts of intellect and artistry, and that women are not bestowed these gifts. So that's a pretty profound and revolutionary statement from 1568, and something that I think really unifies this whole program together. So we hope you will enjoy this piece from, it is a secular piece, Come fie magia e splende, which translates to How It Blazes and Shines. This is a love song about how their love is so bright, it blazes and shines like the sun. We hope you enjoy it. about 1600 to 1750 roughly, and this is where the structure, a lot of the structure that we have now in orchestral music was really developed, and that's where we get it from. So harmony as well as melody, many of the instruments that you see here are being developed, so this is when we really start hearing actual true orchestra music. This period also still uses polyphony that you heard in that last piece, where we have multiple pieces or multiple players playing different melodies together. But this is where it becomes more refined, and we're sort of starting to assign some rules to this. The piece that we'll be hearing is by Francesca Caccini, and this is her Sinfonia from the opera The Liberation of Ruggiero, which is widely believed to be the first opera written by a woman, and incidentally also the first opera to be performed outside of Italy, where opera originated. So she was thought to be the first that kind of took the show on the road and toured different countries in Europe with her touring party that put on this opera for others. And even the orchestra members packed up and joined the tour bus, so to speak. So this is the first that we're seeing of that, and this is the Sinfonia, so kind of like the opening to a play. That kind of comes from this, essentially. This is kind of the first demonstration of that, where there would be a nice, light Sinfonia played by the orchestra, pit orchestra, and then it would open the opera. So again, this is the Sinfonia. Hope you enjoy. Demonstrating that style. So going on, we are moving to the classical period. So this is kind of where we get the name classical music. It's sort of based on this period, although there is some debate about that. But essentially the classical music is about 1750 to 1820, and this is where we really see a wealth of composers gaining large amounts of notoriety. People are hiring them to be their court musician, their court composer, and actually Haydn in the previous in the Baroque period is known for being enlisted to compose a symphony every week for his patron. So he would have to work on the symphony, present it on Sunday, start again, do it again, do it again, do it again. And he was starting to think of it as kind of, indentured servitude at that point, because it's just like, oh my gosh, there's so much composing. But this is a true explosion of classical music, orchestral music. So pieces for the orchestra are becoming larger, more demanding of the players, requiring larger and more proficient performers. And the music of this period is also defined as a little bit more light and clear of a style than the previous period of the Baroque, which has more of a characteristic of being more serious and a little bit darker. So mathematical precision also was very important in this musical period. So this is where we see a lot of the structure of the composition really gives it its character. So this next piece to demonstrate the style is by Mariana Martinez. This is her only symphony that she wrote. She wrote many other masses and oratorios and that kind of thing. And actually several of her works have actually been quoted in their own pieces by her colleagues at the time. So even actually Mozart at this time quoted one of her masses in one of his pieces. So that's a little fun fact about Mariana. So we hope you enjoy this piece, another Symphonia in C major by Mariana Martinez. stop. We are going into the Romantic period. This is a well-loved, beloved period of music. This is the AKA the Beethoven era, although, you know, we want to have a female composer in there too. So this is where we close our first half, and we'll have a 15-minute intermission after this, and then we'll have a couple of longer works after that. So this is the Romantic period. This is where we start getting into some of the grandest works for orchestra that we have seen in terms of the scale of the orchestra. I mean, they had to come up with the term grand orchestra to say, okay, I'd like one orchestra, but I'd actually like another orchestra next to that, and then I'd like a full choir surrounding that. I think that'll do it. So that's where we see things of that scale. The length of pieces is also quite long. It's kind of like a contest to see who can make the longest piece, I think, sometimes. And just the raw power of the orchestra. This is really kind of the heyday of like what can the orchestra do. So the piece that we're going to demonstrate is the Overture in C major by Fanny Mendelssohn. And some might know the Mendelssohn name. Her brother Felix Mendelssohn, another composer. They are both, grew up together composing pieces, often side by side at family functions and that kind of thing. But unlike her brother Felix, that was his profession. He went on to be a composer, well-renowned, made money publishing works and that kind of thing. And Fanny, on the other hand, was very discouraged from doing so, in fact, barred from doing so, again, by society. Her own father even said, yes, you have a gift, but Felix will be the only one that will be going on to do this line of work. So we are doing Fanny some justice here tonight. This is her only piece for orchestra, although she wrote nearly 400 pieces, while at the same time taking care of her husband, taking care of her ailing parents, having 3 pregnancies, 2 which resulted in miscarriage, and raising their one son. And this is, so all of that before she passed away at the age of 41. So she jam-packed as much composing as she could in her lifetime, and we are all the better for it. Finally, even actually very recently, within the last 20 years or so, there's about 17 pieces of Felix Mendelssohn that we have discovered actually were Fanny's pieces that she asked her brother to publish under his name so that they could be published and get recognition for. So this is our homage to Fanny Mendelssohn that will close out our first half. Like I said, we'll have a 15-minute intermission and we'll be back. Stick with us. everybody came back. I think it counted. So thanks for coming back. We have just 2 pieces left for our program tonight. Our next piece brings us into the 20th century with a piece by Lily Boulanger, who's a French composer in the height of the Impressionist movement of the early 1900s. So music in this era of the grand scheme of music history really seeks to kind of bend those traditional rules that were established in periods past. So we see music being played with, experimented with in terms of its structure, the harmonies, instrumentation, and this piece is definitely a good example of that. Lily has lots of examples of experimenting with meter, instrumentation. Actually, several of the pieces have optional parts to play. Just play this part or this part, whichever one you want. I don't care. And it adds to kind of the drama that we experience in this piece. So the piece D'une soir triste, which translates to Of a Sad Evening, is a really emotional piece, I believe, that was written during Lily's struggle with having pneumonia and tuberculosis, and ultimately passing away at age 24. So, very young woman, and widely regarded in France and Greater Europe as a prodigy from a very young age. Many of her colleagues at that time agreed that if she had more time on Earth, that she would be this era's Beethoven. So this is a very impactful piece, a tragedy, but very emotional and somewhat comforting too. Towards the end, we have this kind of last sigh that you can kind of hear there. So we celebrate her and this piece, and very proud to play it for you now. This is D'une soir triste by Lily Boulanger. history lesson for today. Thank you for paying attention, students. With a piece published just last year, so coming all the way up to the present day, by a pretty prolific, well-known Korean-American composer, Soon-hee Newbold, and her piece Gravitas. So as we talk about the 21st century and obviously onward, we don't know, but it seems so far in this century there is a continuation of that exploration, experimentation of the 20th century. We're seeing harmonies, structures of music that are the most complex that we've ever seen. And I would like to thank everybody who has donated in some capacity to this group here. This is a free concert and a class through community education that all of these guys paid for, so they're not paid musicians, and so all the supplies for this are truly from your donations, and anything that you happen to give goes right to this orchestra to get music. Pieces like this that are contemporary, you're usually a little bit more expensive, but helps us pay for a lot of the things that bring this concert to you and keep this group running. So very happy to have you and very grateful for any donations. The last thing I want to mention about this concert tonight is just paying some respects to a member of this orchestra that has passed away, Adrian, who sat in our first violin section for many years, passed away not long ago, and like to dedicate this last piece to him and his humor in many ways up until his last year with us. So this one is for Adrian. We very much appreciate you being here. We've loved rehearsing this music every Tuesday. That's what it's all about. This just happens to be the cherry on top, as I always say. So thank you for being here and supporting us. After the concert, welcome to join us in the cafeteria where these folks have provided some snacks and treats for you all to have some fellowship and conversation after. So thank you very much. We will wrap up promptly before 9 p.m. to leave, as our gracious custodian has agreed to stay and help us clean up after that. So thank you to the school, thank you to the community ed, thank you all of you. This is Gravitas.